Hello, everyone. Today is another wonderful day to hear from Ed. Last time we have heard his model number 2, which talking about crystallizing consciousness. And I'm happy that we have today the third model, the living temple. Remember that he's just presenting his opinion, and then everything what resonates with you, take with you, and you may leave the other things by side. But I'm happy to see that Ed is doing it still for us. And hello, Ed. Welcome.
Hello and welcome everyone to Ra University Module 3. This one is called The Living Temple, and basically I hope to be able to give you a breakdown of how the body part of the complex, the mind-body-spirit complex works. My name is Edward Gregory, and as always, this is science, and science is a process of always refining and changing the models and the things that we know. So feel free to take anything that resonates and leave anything else, but I hope to kind of show you how these things are getting closer and closer to the information that Ra gave us of how everything works and how science is slowly proving that. So I'll get started. This is the idea behind today's module is the idea that your body, the vessel that you inhabit, is a living, breathing temple, an incredibly important part of the creator and consciousness. And the body that you inhabit, this little second density creature, is wonderful and incredible down to the most unbelievably minute scales. And I hope to show you that. And once again, show you that all of those things that make it wonderful all align totally with what Ra said. So I've got lots of kind of science and stuff in there. And, I hope to kind of keep bringing it back to what we all know and love about the law of one. So first off, I want to kind of just talk about the basic idea of what we know now at science as a level. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of the central dogma. Now, this is the idea that your DNA and your genome, it holds all of the patterning and all the information that you need to make you. But that isn't strictly true. So it does, but really what it actually holds is the information to make RNA. Now, RNA, or messenger RNA, is a little signal molecule that is printed off from the DNA in a process called transcription. And that piece of RNA then goes out of the nucleus of the cell and it gets turned into a protein in the process called translation. And that is how it acts as a blueprint for all of the proteins that make up you, all of the different working machines, all of the little tiny elements that fit together to make up you as a thing. But that, once again, isn't the whole picture. Science is showing us now that there's so much more to this picture, and that DNA doesn't hold all the answers that we think it does. For example, those proteins and that are expressed in each separate cell, how does each cell know which ones to express, which ones not to? Because that's very important for cell identity and what they become. So the idea that proteins themselves are very important functional components and almost living entities inside what would be the community of a cell, and then those cells would then scale up to be the community that makes you. So really, when you start looking at what is the thing that bridges the gap between the science and the what we can show in the lab and the metaphysics that Ra talks about, the actual the deeper understandings that drive how these things work. So what we've already shown in the previous module is that what we think of as consciousness and understanding and awareness is all this process of vibration, of quantum vibration being passed from matter into this etheric substrate, as it were. So that kind of way that works, it hopes to show you how the body part of that is the bridge between those different states. It's how the spirit can interact with the mind via the body. So it's very important. So this is what I hope to kind of get across. Now, when we think about the mind, body, spirit complex that Ra describes, yeah, there's three distinct parts, right? The mind part, which is the actual consciousness bit, the conscious and unconscious, is the ego and the thought based part of you. You know, then you've got the body, which is this vehicle that you use to explore the creation, right? And it reflects all of the distortions that you have to overcome or go through in the life that you lead in this incarnation, right? And then the spirit is this little tiny fragmented part of the creator that rides the shuttle around to explore and understand itself. So we've got like Ra quotes there to kind of, you know, alleviate this, but I always think of this as a very, very old principle. This is not something new. The mind body spirit complex, as Ra describes it, is arguably exactly the same as the triprimer. Now, this is the alchemical triprimer. This is something that alchemists used to use to describe the process of material chemistry as it was developing back then, and the connection that had to the metaphysics of what we are. So, where you had the mind, body, spirit, here it would be the body being the corpus, which is the salt, the mind being the spirit and the mercury, and then the spirit being the soul or sulfur, right? And then God is all of these. But the body is this crystal, this corpus that is inhabited by the spirit or the mind, the egoic part. But then both of those things are just these filtered, as we described last time, filtered expressions of that soul or the spiritus part of the mind body spirit complex. So these are very, very old teachings that Ra's elaborating on, but he's doing it in a way that matches very, very well with what science is uncovering about how biology doesn't just work on the atoms. It works on a far deeper context than that, one that we're only just understanding and uncovering now. So this brings me on to something that Ra talks about as the form maker body. Now, in so many different mystical traditions, spanning from all of Asia through India and China, and all the way through, well, the Hermetics and many different principles of mystical teachings that say that your body is formed around the spirit. That the spirit is the thing that inhabits in the middle, and all the atoms and all the cells and all of the body, it just forms itself around that spirit in the center. So it just basically connects up and aligns and joins up and creates itself to align and connect to that blueprint, to that form maker body that Ra talks about. Now, this is being unbelievably researched now because of the fact that, like I said, the actual structure that makes you a human, that tells you how long your arms need to be and how tall and how everything's proportioned in the right way, that isn't in the DNA. There's absolutely no system inside the DNA that knows where the individual cell is. It does not know that it's in your leg. It does not know that it's in your arm. The whole taxonomy of the body does not know how long or how to make itself into a human. There's no pattern inside the DNA to make that. Now, hopefully I'll go on to show you that this idea of the former maker body and the etheric body, as it's been called in many mystical traditions, is now being discovered. The spirit that the body forms itself around is being found. And it all comes down to, once again, vibration. All of these things that we've spoken about in the previous modules, they are the same forces that form the body to be what it is. So this is, at the minute, being researched by someone, has been researched and been brought forward to the greater understanding by Rupert Sheldrake. Now, he was a biophysicist who essentially was trying to understand this idea of taxonomy and how we grow into what we are. And what he came to kind of understand is that it's all because of this thing that he calls morphic resonance. So it's like a field that exists, that stores the information, like we spoke about, say the Akashic or the greater consciousness that Carl Jung talks about, that we're going to be getting to later on down the road. But the idea that all of that information that happens via evolution, via you learning something, or what's called the 100 monkey effect, where if you teach 100 monkeys the same thing, then somehow all of the monkeys will learn how to do it. This comes down to this same idea that we're all connected to one greater consciousness, something that grows and evolves with each of us and what we do and what we learn. And it is the thing that holds the form, the shape that you are. It's the thing that allows you to see the spirit, that allows the spirit to see what animal it's going to be inhabiting, what step on the whether it's going to fit the lessons that spirit needs to learn. So when you actually look at the kind of the idea that there's a multi-dimensional blueprint, a fractal patterning, a nested form that your body grows around. It step by step, it will grow to that template. Now, what I'm hoping to show you is that template is malleable. It's something that we can actually interact with, that we can actually control. So this is where the idea of healing comes from, when in Ra, what Ra talks about. This idea that this field is the baseline of what you are, and you grow to that form maker body, to that morphogenic template. Now, in the lab, they've started to actually find real incredible evidence of this, and found incredible ways that it can be used. So this brings me along to the work of Michael Levin. Right now, he basically runs a lab that works on tissue regeneration, which is a very, very new field of research, and it works on the idea that you don't need to have, drugs or whatever else, that you can actually show the body how to regrow itself. You can teach it to regrow an organ. You can show it how to regrow a limb. So his research has undeniably found this template. Now, he's done so many different incredible works that I won't be able to get into, but some of them will blow your mind. I highly recommend that you go and look at his work in more detail than what I can tell you here, because it will shock you at how fundamental this idea that this template forms what you are. Right. So some of the stuff that he did, first off, he took an egg, that was at some of the early stages of cell division, when it's starting to kind of change and the cells are replicating, right? And then he took it and he smushed it all up. So all of those cells were in different positions to where they started off. Now, they'd all moved around, and they'd moved over here and over there. Now, like I said, each individual cell has no way of knowing where it's supposed to be. It has no way of knowing how it moved from one area to another, or where it was originally supposed to be. But somehow those cells worked their way back to their original positions, because of the fact they are not growing because of where they are. They're growing because they match that template. And the cells found their way back to their correct positions because of the fact they are linked to that morphogenic template of what makes you a little human, or anything, whatever it is. Now, other stuff that he's done is incredible. He's actually made different animals grow back limbs, not by giving them drugs or genetic modification or any of these other things. What he did was he used the right type of light vibrations, of frequencies of light, to activate optogenetic electrical sensors on the cell membrane, that convinced the cells that they're basically back in the womb. And then on its own, these animals grew back their limbs. And not only that, he then took that and he was able to make animals grow extra limbs. You're going to see some of the weird things he's been able to create with this technology. But first, I want to kind of carry on with just how incredible this shows, this template of what we are to be. So there's these planaria worms that he uses. Now they're like flatworms with like a head and like a little internal digestive system, and and the incredible thing about them is if you cut them in half, they won't die. They'll actually just grow into completely two new complete worms. Right? Not only will they be two new worms, they'll have the memory of the original worm, both of them. So that once again challenges how we see memory working. But those two little individual worms, you can take one of these worms and you can chop it into 20 separate pieces. And each separate piece will grow back into a fully healthy new worm. Now, he was able to use this to show that the actual template that worm grows to is changeable, is modifiable. He said that you can cut off the head of one that's got like a pointy head and put on one that's got like a T head. And then once it's got like a little T-shaped head, if you then cut that worm up with the little T head, instead it should, in theory, have the genetics of the long, straight worm head. It should only have the genetics for that long, straight worm head. But if you chop it up, it will grow with the little T head. Because of the fact, well, by replacing the head onto that creature, the entire creature then changes its morphogenic template to be one of the T head worms rather than one of the straight head worms. So he was able to get them to grow different heads, grow heads out all over the place using this exact same process. Because of the fact that the field that is generated is what then the cells and the animal organizes itself to. So I hope this isn't too squeamish for anybody, but these are some of the images of some of the experiments that you ran. So here you have a frog embryo, a small frog that that has had multiple arms growing out of the side of its body. And once again, this isn't by modifying it in any way other than giving it the right light signals to give it a bioelectric marker to tell it that's where an arm grows. And this is the same thing here with this tadpole, that he's basically got it to grow an eye coming out of the enteric system by doing the same process. And down here at the bottom, these are those flat worms that I mentioned. Now the number E there, that is a normal taxonomy, but F and G, F has two heads, one at the top and one at the bottom, and G has four separate heads, all under one creature, showing that all you need to do is give it this morphogenic template, and it itself will grow towards what is beamed into it. So we grow to these templates. He also goes in to say that there's lots of different things that run how we get this morphogenesis, how we get this shape and this form. So he says that it's a mixture of this genomic idea where it's the DNA, it's the genes that you have and what proteins you can make that form what animal you're going to be. But then he says you've also got this bioelectric idea, which is this this field that governs what you grow into. And then he says that there's also mechanical elements like forces and things that drive change, that fundamentally activate gene patterns and things like that. So that's something I'm going to be getting to in a little while. But all of these things show that, like, the actual shape that we are, the form that we are, relies on lots of different things. It's not just as simple as you've got that DNA, so then you grow into this, right? In fact, it shows that you are a spirit that is beamed into matter, and that matter organizes itself around you, the you projected into it. So how would that work? How would you be able to project you into these massive cells? Well, if we look at DNA has been shown to have some incredible quantum properties. So first off, it can actually structure the water inside the cell so that it makes hexagonal gel-like structures that allow for the cell to do certain functions, to actually to move certain elements around the cell, to do different processes that we don't really understand yet. And they're finding that a lot of the water inside the body has this kind of structured, almost gel-like state. So DNA is one of the primary things that actually does that inside the cell. Now, this idea that it's a sensor, an antenna, comes down to the actual structure of it, the swirl pattern that we see, this archetypical of a DNA molecule. If you look at that, you've got the actual swirl pattern of the two side things swirling. That gives you a very precise wavelength that DNA can interact with. Now, then, if you go a stage deeper than that, you've got the ATs and the Gs and the Cs and the chemicals inside that. They have a very specific vibrational frequency that they will react to. And then, even smaller than that, you've actually got in between each hydrogen bond of the base pairs, you've got a proton, basically a hydrogen ion that bounces backwards and forwards, giving you three very separate ways of absorbing and projecting vibration as a fractal antenna, going from a huge wavelength, as high energy wavelengths go, all the way down to a really incredibly tiny, high-end energetic wavelength. So all of these things mean that DNA itself is a transmitter, and every single one of us will have a very, very slightly different transmitter, because our DNA code will be different. The way that it's structured, the way that it's held will all be different. Every cell in your body will have a very different structure inside the nucleus that is held in that structure, so it knows what proteins to produce. All of that happens because the atoms themselves align to that morphic field. The DNA is an incredibly precise antenna that links that spirit to this body, and it makes it incredibly, high resolution, incredibly a strong encryption, as you could say, to the body that you have, because of the fact that every single part of you has got these little fractal antennas connecting up to that very specific field. Now, DNA itself has got DNA in water has some incredible effects. Now, if we're talking about how DNA could be the thing that's, or is the thing that gives us all life, you could argue that from when we look at astronomy and we're looking out into space, that water exists all over the place. They think it's the third most abundant chemical out in the cosmos. Now, a lot of the scans they've done to measure the spectra given off by this water shows that it's very likely to have biologically relevant molecules in it. Lots and lots and lots of it. How would that work? How would, like, pieces of water on asteroids, pieces of water on planets, pieces of water all over the place, all have these same kind of chemical elements routinely dissolved in it? Not to mention that if you're talking about how life could just organize on its own, the patterning for DNA is actually shown to have an incredibly weird effect called the phantom DNA effect, which, if you talk about sympathetic resonance, like we spoke about before, or you're talking about the idea that water is conscious and it can carry information over wide distances, then this idea that the phantom DNA effect shows is incredible. It said that basically, if you get one vial of water with DNA in it, and then you have another one behind it with nothing in it at all, just pure water, and then you beam like a laser through the one that has the water, the DNA in it, into the other one, or you can do it where it has the DNA in the water and you remove the DNA. I think this has been done both ways. The water itself will hold onto an incredibly precise imprint of that DNA. It's called the phantom DNA effect, because if you then put the molecules into that water, it will self-organize into DNA. So if we're saying, we've been discussing that the universe works in this fractal hologrammatic nature, and that water might have this far, far more reaching consciousness than we could understand, then that would mean that this quantum DNA effect could be how DNA is so prevalent, how it is the thing that will guide life for whatever, which maybe for the entire universe. So I think that kind of blows my mind. And there's so much more to this. Once again, I highly recommend that you look into the quantum properties of water, because one of the other things I found out that's incredible is that water interacting with DNA can actually cause quantum tunneling through the DNA. So that means the water can basically jump from one side to the other but in doing so, it can actually cut DNA. And I don't mean just cut it randomly. It seems to be strategic, as in this consciousness that water has can actually cut DNA in specific places to cause genetic change, to cause mutation and maybe evolution. So I highly recommend looking into this interaction between DNA and water at that quantum level, because it's kind of mind-blowing. And once again, all of these things come down to this idea that the infinite intelligence is this overwhelming guiding factor in how all of these things fit together. And it is one beautifully orchestrated tapestry. Now we're going to get into kind of one of my personal favorites. This comes down to this idea of how does the DNA then pick up the energy and the information from around it? How does it know what's going on outside? How does it know, anything at all other than what it is? Because at the minute it's just beaming that in, right? So when you look at how cells themselves are built, remember we said last week about how important microtubule structures are, and they're these long tube-like structures that function to kind of hold the cell in specific shapes, but also they pass these vibrations up and down them that basically arguably may be the root of consciousness, the way that consciousness is understood. Now, when you look at that vibration being pulled up and down those microtubules, a large chunk of those microtubules go from the outside of the cell, from the cell membrane, down to the nucleus where the DNA is. And they act like these rigid structures that connect the outside layer to the inside layer. Now, the DNA itself inside that nucleus has got very specific places that it has to be. That's how that cell knows what it is. Right? That's the bit that the chromosomes organize themselves to fit, so that those specific bits are being expressed and that cell knows what it is. So what this mechanotransduction idea is, that if you pull on those those microtubule wires, then you pass the message via these nuclear transmembrane proteins from the outside of the nucleus to the inside, to where the DNA is. And that little pull on the outside could then let genes pop off and become activated. So basically what we're talking about is a way that vibration can be passed from the outside through to then activate genes. So if you think about that as in the way that you talk about yourself, the way that emotions affect you, the things that Ra talks about, how unprocessed catalysts build up and then they create illness. All of these things we're talking about as vibration. Emotions have a vibration. Thought has a vibration. All of those things could then be changed into these unbelievably precise and tiny vibrations down those microtubules that can then turn on or off positive or negative genes, depending on what we are selecting. And we're putting into that conscious water layer that is then passing this vibration from one structure to the next to then give us the outcome at a genetic level. Now, when you look at the actual genome itself, they've found out that this vibrational activation thing is incredibly important, far more than they ever thought. So about 40% of the promoters, as in the little bit before a gene, that it needs to be turned on before that gene can be expressed. About 40% of those little promoter regions have these weird little structures of DNA called an I motif or a G quadruplex. And that's basically where the G, the guanine residues or the cytosine residues, they basically fold up on top of one another and they make these really crazy structures. Now, if you then pull on the DNA strand, those structures unfold and they allow that gene to be expressed. So once again, you've got all of these different systems built into your genome that react to vibration. Right? And they are the same systems that we've already looked at being connected to consciousness. So we have all of this overlap, all this connection between how you think and how your body works. Now, at the minute, there's a developing system called sonogenetics. And this works on the idea that, very similar to, say, like the Rife machine or other previous sound-based healing modalities, it works on the idea that with ultrasound, you can actually turn on or off specific genes. You can actually activate certain types of neurons to maybe treat depression or other things like that using nothing but sound. So once again, it's another thing that I feel is incredibly important for us to kind of like look at moving forwards in how this whole system comes together. Here you go. We've got a couple of images of how that all works. So here you've got the top image is what's called the G quadruplex. See, it's got the little 4 kind of G's lined up. And then the one underneath it is the I motif, which is where just loads of the string of the little C's connect up. And then over on the right hand, there is a picture of the cell on the at the top, with the all the systems that then activate this mechanotransduction, this pulling from the outside to the inside. And then on the inside, you've got the nucleus there, where specific systems allow the genes that need to be expressed purely via vibration and nothing else. So moving on, all of these things show that the body is far more adept at understanding these vibrational signals than we give it credit for. And the more that we're finding out about biology, the more mind-blowing these connections become. So quantum biology is a progressing field that I've got a lot of interest in, and it's shown some incredible things. So first off, the idea that like metabolic processes and enzymatic processes, all they really do is, because of the structure of the protein, they create a little bubble, a small little area, whereas they can affect quantum outcomes. So they can join protein, they can join chemicals, they can change the activation energies, and all these different important systems that rely on quantum systems in order for them to work. So, for example, your vision, like when you see stuff, the amount of photons that your eye takes in compared to the amount of cones and rods that you have processing them means that your eyes, if they worked by classical Brownian motion, you'd be quite a lag between what you see and what happens, a noticeable lag. But it doesn't. You don't have one. In fact, your eyes seem to work far faster than given credit for. That's because they've only just found this out, that the rods and cones inside the photoreceptors of the eye actually work on a quantum principle. Whereas you've got these things called excitons that once the photon is accepted in one end of the cone or the rod, the instant that it is absorbed, this exciton, which is a quantum particle, then before the photon is absorbed, it is held in a superposition, an on-off position. But as soon as that photon hits it, then it becomes one or the other. And we're not talking about like it moving from one end of the protein to the other. That would take far too long. The instant that photon hits, the nerve responds at the other end. It's faster than light, essentially, which is kind of mad. The latest theory about how smell works is incredible. It's called the quantum smell hypothesis. And it basically shows that your nose has far more variability in what the chemical receptors can do than it should do from the amount of receptors you have. So they're looking into how that works. And it seems to be that there's a quantum tunneling process that's performed by the nasal receptors that allows you to literally scan like the quantum aspect of molecules. But we're still just coming to slightly understand all of these things, right? But the point of this is when you start looking at the other densities and these higher dimensional energies that we're bringing in, that we're trying to learn to understand, we already have the equipment to do it. It comes down to learning how to use that, and science is only just starting to show that we can, and it's starting to find the ways in which we do. So one of the things I think is really incredible is this to do with this etheric template and this way that the body complex is formed, is that we all form around incredible sacred geometry. I did have a picture that I was supposed to put up that has the fact that your entire face is just made of different Fibonacci sequences laid out in different proportions, and every single part of the body, and as the cell develops, and it's not just for us, it's for every single living thing. The cells, they go through a very specific process to get to the point where they become a thing, where that morphogenic field kind of comes in and becomes that creation. So when I don't know, yes. So if you look at the point when a sperm enters the egg, you get what you see on the left. Now that in the center point where you see those three swirls, that is the exact 0 second point where the vibration of the morphogenic field, if you want to call it that, starts to interact with the egg itself. This vibration goes around, and it's not chaotic, it's very, very precise, and it shows an exact movement of that vibration around the entire surface of the egg as soon as the sperm enters. Right now, on the side over here, you can see the sacred geometry laid out in, as we all know it. But this one on the far right, it shows how the eggs, once the egg is fertilized, how the process that it goes through is exactly the same. You go through the same formation and step-by-step process that sacred geometry describes, in order to get to that one at the bottom, where that is a 64 cell Metatron's cube seed of life pattern made out of cells. And every single thing that we know of in the world gets to that point before it starts to change, before it becomes whatever animal or thing that it's going to be. So see how it was a rounded shape there, right? At that point, you've got a perfect seed of life. But from that point on, it moves into a toroidal pattern. Now, when you look at how a cell separates and forms itself into two cells, you actually see a toroidal pattern form in the top of the cell, a spiral called the mitotic spindle go down the middle, and all of the chromosomes align to those points. So if you want to talk about this idea that we've been talking about, the scale invariance across the universe of everything, then the idea that your cells, they're at the point of conception, that first time they separate, they form a toroidal structure with a spiral going down the center that looks like the same spiral that we have, with points that the chromosomes align to and join up to, that look very much like the chakras, that look very much like the same energetic scaffold that we ourselves are built into, and that is repeated throughout the entire universe. On that last slide, I didn't talk about it, but you can see how different aspects of galaxy formation follows the exact same geometries. So here you can see on the left, that is what I'm talking about. That line up the center there is where all of the different chromosomes are organizing themselves. Right, you'll see down that center point, you've got the two dots there. Those there are the points at which the microtubules organize themselves to make the two cells. And then once you get to that 64 seed of life pattern that we spoke about before, the picture on the right shows that kind of toroidal shape that forms, that there is the point when everything actually starts to develop into what it's going to become. And it all follows the same sacred geometry, is the same scale invariant structures all the way up and all the way down. And we are made of those. We are the living temple that we are is made of sacred geometric patterning. So how does all of this information get passed on in the biological way, and how does cells kind of remember and store this information and all these other stuff that they're going to need to do if we're talking about them like we do, with them being these little sentient things, each one of them knowing their job and knowing how to, that are aligned to this template to make you. So epigenetics is a very recent study that they found that DNA itself can carry lots more information than what's written in the A, T, Gs, and Cs. Right now, in this paradigm of understanding, epigenetics means extra on top of genetics, added on to genetics. So there's lots of different ways that the body can do this. So you've got DNA methylation, which is or acetylation. There's lots of different processes where there's an enzyme that adds a marker to a specific bases of DNA. Therefore, your cells can read those bits and say, oh, turn this one off, turn that one on, turn this one off, turn that one on, when the cell type itself might have these ones are turned on ordinarily. So it's a way of a specific process or a specific gene or something being targeted across generations and across cells. So you can actually add that marker, and then say your children will inherit that marker. So there's other ways that can work. Instead of just being attached to the DNA itself, you've got the histones, which are these structures that DNA wraps around. I'll show you those in a second. But they can actually be altered as well to show which parts are allowed to express and which ones aren't. Then inside your actual DNA itself, there's lots and lots of other elements that we don't really fully understand yet. Most of them are called non-coding RNA. They used to say that there was junk DNA and that all of this stuff is nonsense and it's useless. But they now know that's mostly wrong, and that non-coding RNA makes up most of that junk DNA, and it has huge amount of regulation on different gene activity and different other things. Now, one of the functions of epigenetics is the fact that it can kind of take things that are happening to you in real time, things that are happening to you in your daily basis, and then take that and send it into signals that can then affect your DNA. I'm hoping that all of these different processes I'm talking about are getting across to you the idea that what you think and how you act and how you feel and the things that you go through, the catalyst and how you deal with that catalyst, all of those things affect you down to the molecular level, down to the genetic level, and that by thinking right, by doing the right things, you can actually reprogram those genetic markers to express different things. Lots of different spiritual teachings, they talk about activating different gene sequences and opening up yourself to other biological processes. This would be the way that those things would work. That by meditation you could activate specific genes. By thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way, you can activate or change how those genes work, which will influence everything. And like I said, these epigenetic markers are probably the things that we think of as like ancestral memory, the memories that are passed on in instinct, things like that. But all of those things are still going to be attached to that morphogenic imprint. But they're going to be more physical. They're, like I said, they're the things that the ancestor part of you carries rather than the spirit part. So here is a picture of the kind of what I was describing. So the chromosome over here, on the bottom left, that is wound up DNA, but it's wound up in such a way that you can package it, because it's really, really long, the DNA, but you can package it into really, really tiny places by going through these different layered structures. So the chromosome itself is made of these chromatin fibers that are just wrapped up loops and loops and loops and loops of these things called histones. Now, if you get 4 histones, or 8 histones, add them together, it makes a nucleosome, and then they all wrap up, and they make small, ever smaller kind of spools to wrap the DNA around. Every single step of that process can be affected by epigenetic modification, not to mention the DNA itself. So, like I said, how you think, how you feel, all of these things can affect the molecular level of what you are. So, some other incredible things about you as an energetic energy, because I think this is going to be good for setting us up for next week, so for next module. So, the mitochondria are a vitally important part of your cells. Now, arguably, these are an invading bacteria that got into the cells of millions and millions of years ago. They got into a eukaryotic cell, and they provided a new way of giving it energy. So instead of killing it, the eukaryotic cell actually kind of said, "No, you can come and live with us," and that kind of created the mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are in every single cell in your body, and they're basically the power plants. They produce ATP, which is this energy that essentially that fuels all of the other functions inside your body. They're the things that break down sugars into energy. They have loads of different roles. Like they actually kind of help kill a cell if it needs to. They have a specific their own piece of DNA. They're very interesting structures. But once again, these things work on incredible quantum processes. They actually drive ATP production using pathways that pass electrons around, like literally incredibly well orchestrated chemical quantum processes that allow us to have all this energy. Now, if the equivalent of these is about 50 to 70 kilograms of ATP a day from what is like 2,000 calories that we take in, that's the equivalent of running a 100-watt light bulb all of the time, non-stop, and still having enough energy to climb a mountain left over. Like, that's all comes from these little machines. So, like I spoke about before, this idea that the scale invariance of the system shows that we're exactly the same as everything. That the sacred geometry is built in at all levels. So, if you go and look at the structure of a tree, you go and look at the branches of the lungs. If you go and look at the structure of the nervous system or the blood supply, and then you go and look at rivers and the actual biological repeatability of those structures is mind-blowing, because we are unity, right? So here you go. That there is a branch that looks exactly like a chemical structure. Then you've got our tree stump showing every single year that it's alive. It's very, very similar to the individual fingerprint that we have. These structures of tree branches and lungs, that's the same as river networks. All of these things show that same patterning is the same for all of us, universe-wide. It is the sacred patterning of, what makes us this incredible temple that we are. So once again, I spoke about water briefly before, but I'm going to kind of rush through it again. This DNA, phantom DNA effect means that it could be the thing that drives all of life. That water could be the thing that holds that etheric imprint into a specific position. And the work of Veda Austin that I spoke about last week could very well be a way of us understanding that and moving further towards those realizations, that the things that we say to ourselves, the things that we think, are absorbed by this consciousness that is nested in us. This subconscious, or like I said, this the consciousness of water. It can affect DNA. It can cause mutation. It can do many, many things. So it can't be it can't be dismissed as a possible means by which all of this information can be carried. So moving in, I want to kind of just briefly talk about some of the other incredible structures that inside us that we have that are very real kind of spiritual tools. So we've heard about the kind of the solar plexus being the art of kind of the ego aspect. In that region, you have the enteric nervous system. Now, there are as many neurons inside your gut, driving how your metabolism, how your enteric nervous system moves food around. There is as many neurons inside that area as there are in your brain. And they work on exactly the same neurotransmitters. They work on all of these incredible systems that are very well integrated for awareness. So when people say about trust your gut, or you have a gut feeling, uh, there's lots of evidence to say that if you trust that gut feeling, it is right far more than you know. Like Ra says about how the body, the understanding the body's wisdom, that gut brain access is very, very important, and it should never be underestimated. But how does it know? So once again, I'd say that it is almost a better receiver than the brain. But if you want to talk about the brain, there is lots and lots and lots of evidence now for the different areas that work to do with meditation and different altered states. I've mentioned this last week, and I've kind of gone through it a little bit more detail here. But I think I'm going to use a large chunk of this in next one, because I'm going to connect all of these things to how your meditation and spiritual practices actually affect the body, and how those specific regions that we're talking about there are incredibly important for your understanding of you, and for how we see the world around us, and how arguably is going to lead us directly into how we can move energy. So first off, I wanted to do the pineal gland, but once again, I'm going to include that in next time. But I did want to talk about hair. So Ra talks about hair being this functional antenna that we should have a 4 centimeters or 4 inches. I can't remember what it is, but a length of hair, and it works as this antenna, and it helps bring energy in, like energetic awareness and understanding via that's why we should all have it, right? But when you actually look at the actual structure of hair, it actually looks remarkably like a coaxial cable. When you look at the kind of the outside and the inside, they both work on different voltages. So you've got a positively charged outer side and a negatively charged inner side. They actually work as a piezoelectric modifier. So if you move them around, they actually produce their own charge. They're very good at absorbing and connecting to charge. That's why your hair goes all tall when you hold a static balloon or whatever, because of the fact that they are very, very responsive to electrical signals, to outside energetic processes. So once again, these are all things that Ra says that you can really look at and completely understand by looking at how the biology works. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that jogging or some kind of mild exercise actually causes activation of what's called piezoelectric effect, and this happens in the hair as well, where the collagen actually when it moves, it produces electrons, and your bones, when you actually when the calcium crystals kind of get deformed or pushed slightly, they actually produce electricity. They produce electrical output that then fuels the body system. So all of these things are really wonderful and incredible things that I'd highly recommend you look into more, because your body does amazing things. So to finish up, this is kind of a breakdown bit for you to have a look at kind of afterwards, if you'd like to, because it's not very, very bold on here, but it talks about how it basically sums up all the things we've talked about. So we've gone through all of these different layers by which the body is basically like a receiver. Like it's this biological system that works on proteins and whatever else, but inside that it works at a far, far more precise, far more accurate resolution. And every single stage all the way up, we've got things in place that we can interact with the outside internally, and that those things, whether vibrationally, by thought, by meaning, whatever else, they can affect us in positive or negative ways. And all of those things there, the catalyst and how we process it, can then scale up to disease, can scale up to illness, can scale up to us not being aligned with that original template. And that's what Ra talks about when he says about getting yourself about how you heal yourself. No healer in the world can heal you. No doctor can heal you. No drug can heal you. You heal you. The placebo effect is the most powerful drug. It will heal more people than anything else because of the fact that your thoughts are the things that control wellness. And by understanding that and understanding this unity, this that you are the creator, that every single part of you is here to show you this catalyst so that you can learn, so you can grow. And by realigning with that template, which is similar to balancing the chakras and doing the energy work so that you are connected to that etheric body, that form maker body. By returning to that, all illnesses go away. One of the things that Michael Levin's work shows is the phantom limb effect. So if somebody loses a limb, a lot of the time they can still feel like they've got a hand. They can still feel that limb there, even though it's not. That's because of the fact the template for that limb is still there and they can still feel it. You just need to tell your body to grow back to that template and it will. And you can grow back your arm. Because all you need to do is realign to that template. And that's exactly what Ra talks about. He says that a healer, all they can ever do is give you that template. And you have to choose to accept that and then to move your body back to what it should be. You know, Ra's also very, very kind of touchy about healing and, you know, saying that being taught how to heal properly, as in, you know, I touch you and you're healed, comes with such an unbelievable amount of responsibility. If you do learn that and you do know how to do that, then it's very likely that you're going to depolarize because of the fact that you can't use it in the to the full that you'd need to. So I think that all of these things are very important for us to understand inside ourselves, that we have the power to heal ourselves. We have the power to realign to those templates. That doesn't mean we're not going to get ill. Of course we are. We still get catalyst. We're all that's a standard part of being alive. Hey, look, the little tiny bacteria and things, they still need a chance to replicate and live, don't they? But by understanding our oneness and our connection to those things, we have more control over the severity of that catalyst and the ability for us to rise above the catalyst and to integrate it and to learn from it is as important as being healthy occasionally. You know, as long as you can always get yourself back to that healthy space because you know that you're creator, because you know that is the optimum state, and it's just a case of getting yourself back to that template. So, as I said, that kind of connects up to what I was saying before. Your body is this template. Your cells grow around it. Consciousness and how you think and what you are, this mind, body, spirit connection, can control and can influence every aspect of it. And all of those things should show you that, you know, your vessel is built to house you as creator. It's got so many incredible functions that allow that to happen. And hopefully next week we're going to see some of the things that we'd actually be able to show now that your body can do. Like, in next module, the energetic body, we're going to be talking about how coherence and the heart-based connection that kind of Ra describes is vitally important to this whole process of ascension of us growing energetically. And I'm going to be talking about biophotons and how you can project energy out of the body. I'm going to be talking about the aura and lots of other interesting stuff. But this is where we start going away from the science so much, and we start getting really into kind of the metaphysics, but also keeping it with stuff that we can back up and we can research ourselves and understand deeper as adepts, and hopefully use and in a very real practical sense. So thank you ever so much. I hope that was okay, and yes, hopefully see you all next time.
Thank you very much, Ed. It was really wow. Let me put it in that way. And I hope that the people also like it. The most amazing part for me was to hear about the water interacting with the DNA. Would you like a bit expand on that one?
Yeah, of course. DNA essentially has got this really weird effect where around the outside of it, for a very small period, it creates basically this kind of quantum tunnel, this like field around it. So all of the water that comes in towards it kind of gets bounced off around the this this field, this protective bubble around the DNA, right? So any water that comes in kind of hits it and bounces away, right? But in the process of doing that, the water molecules themselves, they kind of align. So they end up making little hexagrams where the positive and the negative ends of the water kind of align. They make these structures that then make huge walled structures going all the way around the DNA, like an actual tunnel made of water, allowing whatever kind of proteins and things that go in to affect how the DNA work, that they could go in like full easy access up and down the protein, up and down the structure, because of the fact the water basically clears out the way for them. It opens the whole space up. And like I said, then that goes on to actually structure the water. So the water then, this pattern, it extends outwards, and it then gives you the actual structure that the cell needs to do all its different things, to move these nutrients from over here to over there, for the RNA to move outwards. That structured water that the DNA creates is part of the way that it that we work. We need that. We're only just starting to understand it now, which kind of blows my mind.
Thank you very much, Ed. I think I will dive deeper into it by my own research. Yeah, thank you very much, Ed. I'm already looking forward to the model number 4, the energetic body, that will be taking place by end of January. And I'm happy to see you then. Thank you.